Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'd like to do note we have two empty desks sitting out there for Fletcher and Harper. We have others sitting outside. If you needed a graphic reminder of what gun violence does and ripping us apart, that is a pretty moving tribute. It's also a call to action, and I'm going to thank all of the folks who are here with our legislative leaders who have worked on this for years. We have groups here that are supporting us. I'd like to call out Violence Free Minnesota, Moms Demand Action, Protect Minnesota, Students Demand Action, Annunciation Light Coalition, Giffords, and so many others. And then you're going to be hearing from Bianca and Tommy, but you're also going to be hearing from Lydia. And I'd just like to note, I oftentimes say this in times of tragedy, where the courage of people come from who are in the midst of tragedy and their own struggles, take that and channel it into action. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. We gavelled in the House last week in a pretty solemn ceremony, because it's the first time since the loss and the murder of Speaker Hortman, Mark, the murder or the attempted murder of Senator Hoffman and his wife Yvette. This comes on the heels of the horrific action that took Fletcher and Harper's life, injured 30 others, including Lydia, in a shooting. Minnesotans have been demanding since that day and long before that we not let this issue go away, that in this moment, we've seen this so many times in America, oh, there's nothing we can do. Isn't that tragic? We have another shooting, Uvalde, Parkland, and the names go on. And then to get to that list, now we have Annunciation. Well, the difference is in Minnesota that we're not willing to let this go. We are not willing to say this is the way we have to live, and we're taking action to do something about it. In December, I became the first Minnesota governor to take executive action on gun violence, strengthening current laws on the books, directing state agencies to take concrete steps to prevent gun violence-related injuries and death, and creating the statewide Safety Council. It was an important first step reflecting what the public was asking us to do, but it was simply that, a first step. Cannot be a back burner issue. We're going to come together with this group here, these legislative leaders, with the action of the community, with brave individuals like Lydia standing up and making a difference. We've got a comprehensive package, and just to give you an idea what's in here, these are things that data shows us will protect lives. We'll stop some of these things from happening, and we'll strengthen what we already have. We're under no illusion that we could stop every single one. But the idea of throwing up your hands and saying, what can we do? When America is the place that this happens most often, it happens day after day after day. There have already been dozens and dozens of mass shootings across this country since the first of the year. But we're proposing a ban on military assault rifles, high-capacity magazines, ensuring accountability among responsible gun owners. These should be easy lifts, safe storage, reporting your weapons when they're lost or stolen, closing the ghost gun loophole, implements a firearm insurance requirement, establishes a firearm and ammunition tax, and creates and expands early intervention resources, including school resources, working to go back upstream to prevent anything that happened in Annunciation to ever happen again. These are common sense measures. We've made significant progress. We know the data shows our red flag laws are saving lives. We know that these are concrete proposals that make a difference. We've proven to the rest of the world that Minnesota is built differently. And I want to make this case that this legislative session, this is an opportunity to make Minnesota the safest state around gun violence while doing nothing to impinge on your Second Amendment rights. So I would encourage the legislators who have this. I'll take them pheasant hunting next year and show them that they can do this, but we can also show them the data and work together. This is a time for bipartisan action around an issue that tore at the heart and continues to, and we owe it to the Annunciation families not to have that just be another statistic in the book. In Minnesota, that was the final straw. That was it. I pushed and pushed and pushed, and we couldn't even get legislators to have a hearing. Well, those days are over. Some of these folks in here are going to be testifying today, and they're going to continue to testify. And the legislators that are here, you're going to get sick and tired of hearing me talk about something needs to be done on this. We can multitask. We'll tackle fraud. We'll deal with what happened to us from the federal government, but simultaneously we're going to take care of our own, especially our children. And with that, it's a pleasure to me and an honor to be up here, share this podium with Lydia. So I'll turn it to Lydia. Thank you.
My name is Lydia Kaiser. I'm in 8th grade at Annunciation Catholic School. On August 27th, I was in church, attending the first school mass of the year, when a gunman fired 116 rounds of bullets through the stained glass windows. 2 students were shot and killed. 2 students survived gunshot injuries to the head. I'm one of them. Many more students were injured by bullets and flying glass. We all hid under the pews. The older students covered the younger students to protect them. I was taken to the hospital and rushed into surgery. The doctor moved a large piece, almost half of my skull, to let my brain swell and to remove bone and bullet fragments from my head. I had a second surgery 3 weeks later to put the piece of my skull back in my head. All children have the right to live, free from gun violence, in schools, churches, and in our communities. Elected officials have a duty to protect us from guns. No one should have to go through what we went through at Annunciation. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bianca Dawkins, and I'm here to turn my pain into purpose. I stand here before you today not only as a cousin and a sister, but as a constituent, a community member, and someone whose life was forever changed in April of 2022. In April of 2022, my cousin and my brother was murdered by gun violence. In an instant, our family's life split into 2 parts: life before and life after. The shock, the anger, the heartbreak, the unbearable realization that someone you love is gone because access to a weapon made a permanent decision in a temporary moment. For families like mine, gun violence is not a statistic. It's not a policy debate. It's not a headline that fades in 24 hours. It's an empty seat at a dinner table. It's a mother grieving. It's children growing up without someone they love. For a long time, I wrestled with the pain, and I still do. I wrestle with the why. I wrestle with the how. I wrestle with what truly justice looks like. But somewhere in that wrestling, I realized something. Pain can either silence you or it can mobilize you. Today, I chose to let it mobilize me. Turning pain into purpose means refusing to let grief be the end of my story. It means standing here and saying clearly, we can do better. Gun violence prevention is not about politics. It's about people. It's about responsible policies that keep weapons out of dangerous hands. It's about common sense laws that prioritize safety. It's about prevention, accountability, and protecting communities before tragedy strikes again. You have the authority to pass laws, but influence does not only belong to elected officials. You do not have to hold office to hold power. You do not need a title to use your voice. Every community member, every parent, every young person, every advocate has influence. Silence is a choice, and so is courage. We all have a role to play. In my cousin's life, it mattered. And if we truly believe that, then our actions, not just our words, must reflect it. We cannot undo April 2022, but we can decide what happens in April 2026. We can decide how many more families will stand in rooms like this sharing their loss. Turning pain into purpose is about intentionality. So today, I honor my cousin, not only with remembrance, but with resolve. Resolve to advocate, resolve to vote, resolve to demand change, resolve to protect the next generation. His story does not end with gun violence. What we do next, together will define that legacy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tommy McBrayer, and I was raised in South Minneapolis. I played college. I went to Roosevelt High School and went to college at Ely, Minnesota. Basketball has always been a huge part of my life. During my sophomore year in college, I received a phone call that I had a baby daughter on the way. And that led me to leave college, and my life took a turn. I couldn't see a path in front of me to find the income, so I ended up selling marijuana to pay my rent and to put food on the table. Just months later, I was tied up, shot, robbed, and left for dead in a duplex hallway at just 20 years old. I was shot in my left back, and the bullet came out by my heart. My lungs collapsed, and I was bleeding out my mouth. I truly thought I was going to die. But God had something more in store for me. I was given a second chance at life. I moved out of town for a year because PTSD is real, and I needed to change my environment, which is when I changed my career path to work with disabled people. I moved back and started my journey of community organizing. I hosted Thanksgiving family gatherings, bringing family and friends together for 10 years. In July 2019, I got into an argument with a family friend, and he pulled out a gun, and I got shot 2 times in my stomach with an FN caliber gun. I found myself running for my life and being chased down. Thank God somebody was driving by to put me in back of their car. When I woke up from being in ICU for 10 hours after being shot, I didn't have anyone there. No mother, no father, for the hardest challenge of my life, mentally, physically, and emotionally. People often ask, how does it feel to be shot? Traumatized mentally, paralyzed physically, and emotionally detached. If you put 2 of your hands on your stomach and try to laugh, you can't without using your stomach. So I went months without laughter. Having to go about life normally isn't easy. It's as easy as it sounds. It took learning about the psychotrauma, meditation, and self-love to understand the importance of internal healing. I want to use my platform to do something about the increase in youth violence in Minneapolis. So I hosted an event called Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Hoops on a Friday night in November. It sold out, 350 people in attendance. That's how I knew it was on to something different, on to something special. 2 weeks later, it became a nonprofit organization. Today, 4 years later, I stand with you, the proud founder and CEO of Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Hoops. We serve communities throughout the Twin Cities who have experienced gun violence firsthand. Our mission is to end gun violence one community at a time. Gun violence exposes our community to PTSD, antisocial behavior, depression, and anxiety. And when you dig deeper to the root problem, you'll find a lack of mentorship, direction, hope for these youth. And since the pandemic, we have seen a decrease in youth and young adult social and emotional skills. So it's easy to do the wrong thing when you don't have the right influences and people around you when life challenges come your way. We are creating space for youth and young adults to give the support that we didn't have, providing structure, mentorship, and coaching they need to build self-love and healthy leaders. Our organization uses basketball as a vehicle to bring violence prevention programs and events to inner city youth affected by gun violence. It's so much more than basketball. But I just want to end today with just saying, together we can end gun violence. You guys, thank you.
Well, thank you. And then not speaking here are the countless stories of children being shot by firearms that were not locked up, loaded in homes. And for all of those families who have suffered the trauma of suicide by firearms in their families, where getting access to the mental health treatment, in addition to making sure the firearms are taken out of the situation using the red flag laws. So I'm grateful to everyone who's here. I think as Minnesotans, the pain of each and every one of these stories can't numb us. And as elected officials, and I appreciate Bianca saying this, the power is coming from the people asking for change. The power is coming from the Annunciation families. The power is coming from law enforcement who knows where we need to make changes. All of those things together, the responsibility to make those changes falls on this legislature. And why we couldn't get a sense of urgency in the fall to get this done, we're here now. We're in this legislative session, and something needs to be done. And so I'm grateful to the folks here. I'm grateful for the leaders. They've worked on this for decades, and the time to make these common sense changes to make sure that these stories aren't replicated is now. With that, we'd be glad to answer some questions.
I wonder how flexible are you? There are some things in here that I think Republicans are interested in. Are you all or nothing? Will you?
Sure. No, we want it. Look, I think this is a comprehensive package, but I'm open to hearing from folks. It's certainly a lot better than saying we don't want to do anything and stalling on that. So I would encourage that. And I think you heard the folks up here, and I have found this out. this issue transcends politics. I do not know the politics. Many of these families, that's not my business, and it's not what they're here for. They're here for something that should be bipartisan. So I think you're right, Mary. I think there's some of these things. I've never understood the storage issue. I've never understood the reporting on lost or stolen weapons. I do think there's agreement on the binary triggers, the ghost guns. I think Republicans have supported that and have voted for some of those things in the past. So I look forward to this. And look, there's a lot of great leadership up here, have their own ideas. I have to tell you, the insurance one, I've always felt very strongly that. Many of you have heard me say this, just the ridiculous nature of this. If you're a homeowner and if you have a dog or a trampoline, you pay more for your insurance because the risk is greater. The same thing is true of guns, but that has never been added. We need to take on the manufacturers who have attacked these things, not allowing us to go after them, immunity. And I'll have to tell you, here in Minnesota, we're going to continue to look after the data. They have spent years blocking any research into the epidemic of gun violence. Minnesota, we're going to stop that. And again, I'll come back to it. None of those things stops your Second Amendment lawful rights to own a firearm. None of them. Look, I'm not going to negotiate against myself to begin with, but what I'm telling Republicans is I am more than happy to hear their ideas. What I'm not going to hear is we can't do this. I don't want the bravado of I've stopped the hearings. I've stopped any, talk about this from some of these legislators. They're going to have the hearings. They're going to get questions. They're going to try and come forward on that. But I'm open to it. If they've got some ideas, I'm ready to hear them.
Governor, between your special session talks back in last fall and now, do you feel there's been any sort of movement in discussions with the other side of the aisle to maybe get some of these things moving?
Well, I can't speak for them on this. I do think what I find interesting was in Alec Preddy's murder, the sub-story on that one was being a lawful gun owner with concealed carry permit and watching some people diminish that who aren't willing to talk about any other type of gun issues. So I think maybe there's a little more nuance to this, that it's a little broader issue. We're not tackling anything on gun ownership, just like we're not on lawful gun ownership. We're not doing that part of it. Conceal and carry, that's your right, and I think those people are trained and should do it, and we've seen that. So my hope is that yes, there's a sense of urgency around this. I think if you took a look at these things, that package is probably about 70 to 80% approval rate amongst people, Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And I think the violence that we've seen since that time of enunciation hopefully moves people to do something.
Senator Latz, or Flynn, we talked a little bit about how maybe the House is more complicated with the time, things moving, but the Senate got forward. Do you see votes on any or all of these coming up in the short term?
There you go.
Does
Sorry.
the entire package pass your chamber at this point?
Well, I'm Ron Latz, Senator from St. Louis Park. I chair the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. And I was the chief author of the red flag law and the background check bill, which we did pass. I really hope that we have a path forward on a bipartisan basis this year. As the governor said, this shouldn't be a partisan issue. This should be a safety issue. And in my experience, talking with gun owners who come to hearings planning to oppose things that we would do because they've listened to some of their advocacy groups that were giving them incomplete information. And I'd say, well, here's what the bill actually does. And some would call me on my home phone or at the office, and I'd return their calls. And I'd say, here's what it really does. And then they say, well, that kind of makes sense. I can understand that. And so I think legislators will also come to that conclusion. There are certainly some legislators in the Senate, Democrats and Republicans, who have some hesitation on some of these bills. And so we've got our work cut out for us. But there should be at least 34, I would hope, combined bipartisan in the Senate that are ready to pass these things. And one reason I have that hope is because there are Democrats and Republicans in purple districts that if they're listening to their constituents, and frankly, if they want to get reelected, they're going to vote with us on some of these things to pass the bills that their constituents, the residents that they represent, want to see passed into law.
Do you anticipate is there any room for strengthening the Red 5 law? Obviously, there's some data to suggest that it's working. I've heard that from some Democrats that you could go further in the amount of people who could petition a court to have somebody's gun suspended, or is that kind of set in stone?
Well, nothing's set in stone. We revisit laws every year around here as we get some experience learning how they're implemented. I've got some county prosecutors that I'm in touch with that send me suggestions for tweaking the language in the statute to make it work better. The governor's got a proposal to include some funding for education and for training, and I agree with that, training law enforcement, training the prosecutors who will be bringing most of the petitions, and also getting information out there to the general public so they know this is a tool that's available. If they're within the categories of those who can bring a petition, great, they'll know what they can do, or they can always call law enforcement. That is included in those who can bring petitions. But if they're not aware that this is a tool that they can use to help save the lives of their family or friends or loved ones who are undergoing some kind of a crisis and has a firearm in the home, if they don't know that tool's available, they're not going to take advantage of it and utilize it. So absolutely, we should have some funding for public awareness, some funding for training. We'll do some tweaks in the statute, I would expect. In terms of expanding the groups that could bring a petition, I'd have to think about that one, and I'll tell you why. Because when we passed the law in the first place, part of the deal, as far as I was concerned, one of the compromises that I made was to, at least in my negotiations, was to limit that a little bit so we wouldn't have the worry about people, neighbors using this to get back at neighbors, or friends groups trying to get retribution over this, that, or the other thing by turning people in or bringing a petition. So I'm a little concerned about whether we go back there. I'd like to hear more if there is more support for broadening those tools. But I think even right now, if you got family members and you've got law enforcement, there are paths forward right now to get into court. And we've seen that. I mean, a number of press outlets have done some deep dives into the data out of the courts. It's been used over 400 times with these petitions, and 85% of them result in court orders that are separating the firearms from the person in crisis. So we absolutely know lives have been saved with this, even as the law is written now. Can we do better? We will always try to do better.
Governor, we're 6 months out from the Annunciation shooting. What do you tell Lydia and his parents here about the fact that you couldn't get a special session? You're facing a real uphill battle now to pass these bills in this legislature. I mean, it's got to be, for them, frustrating to see this process play out.
Yeah, we were just speaking before we came out here, and I said that one of the most powerful tools they have is they need to make people here feel uncomfortable, and that includes me, to be uncomfortable that something hasn't been done, to continue to keep up the pressure, because the standard thing is to just run out the clock and let this go away. And I made pledges to these people. I sat in their houses with them as there was an empty chair for their little ones, or hospitals as they were calling from. I have to make sure that I am doing everything possible to give them what they want to see. And in this case, justice is something that is so much broader. What they're looking at is these are families selflessly making sure we don't go through this, that our children aren't part of this, our brother's not part of this, our cousin, our friends aren't part of this. So I have a responsibility to them to tell them I've got to get this done. And if we don't, it's failure. And I have to look at these families. I have to look at Lydia, who has the courage to come up here and tell a story. No person should be put in this, let alone an 8th grader being put in this situation to have to do this. If she's going to do that work, we need to do everything we can to get it done. So my pledge to them is to continue on. To not get it done is a failure, and I am focused on this. We can multitask, but I told them after Annunciation this had to be different. You hear from legislators who have worked on this for decades. We've got the tools necessary, and I think we get this thing through.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. And for folks who aren't following, we will have a hearing on this this afternoon. And this has been drafted. It's surprising to me to hear that they haven't had the language. I sent it to them. It's also been language that folks have been working on for decades before I got here. This follows 11 other states and the federal government who have banned these military-style assault weapons, these weapons that have been designed for war, maximum high-velocity, maximum casualties situation. And what you'll see today, one, you'll hear from some amazingly strong parents. You'll hear from Harper's parents, Jackie and Mike. You'll hear from Harry, Lydia's dad, and others. You will also hear from the gun industry and the gun lobby. And if you look at the testifiers list, it really is the people, Minnesotans, the 69% of Minnesotans who are standing with these survivors that we're hearing from and are demanding that we do this, have been demanding that we do this before August 27th and certainly afterwards. And the people on the other side are literally, if you look at the testifier list, gun industry lobbyists and folks who sell these weapons. And so what we're talking about is, are we going to be with the people or are we going to be with the gun lobbyists and the gun industry? And I think we here know who we're with, and Minnesotans know who they're with, and I certainly hope that my colleagues do too.
Yeah, I think it's in. We work together with them. Yeah, I think so, and clarification. So you hear the energy here and the passion, and I do think that's an important point that the representative brought up, that you're going to hear the same old things. It's going to be the mental health crisis, and are there really gun industry people here?
That's their testifier list.
Well, maybe it's going to be a little harder than I thought. If that seems crazy to me at this point. That's not the discussion we're having. We're talking about safety and things here, and having gun industry folks, good luck to them today, because that's not where Minnesota's at.
Let's do Governor, what
Yeah.
should you do to get Republicans in the House to the table on this? Are there any measures you can take to ramp up the pressure in front of the...
Well, I think it's this. I think Senator Latz said it. I am not going to read into the hearts of folks because I believe they care. I believe they care about their children. I think they're wrong on the approach to this. But if all of this and everything that's happened and statistically where America's at compared to the rest of the world, if none of that sways you, maybe losing your election sways you. And I think he's right. This is shaping up to going to be a pretty big, heavy storm coming down around issues like this and safety. And I think now is the time for folks to get right with it. And I say that as someone who evolved on this issue and moved along as our country moved. So it can be done once you start to see it. And I bring it up, and First Lady and I talked about setting in my office with the Sandy Hook parents. And so we'll get it.
Minnesotans are in the streets, and they are singing, "It's okay to change your mind."
Yeah.
Right? Come together. And they are singing this throughout the city and throughout this state. And that applies to a whole lot of things, including this issue. So we invite people to join us in this effort to change their minds, to come together, to build the Minnesota that we know people want and understand, and protect our children, just like we've always done. So the question is, we know what we're going to do. The others have to decide what they're going to do, and I'd invite them to walk in the streets and hear that beautiful anthem throughout Minnesota. It's okay to change your mind, right? And come with us, join with us. This is important work to do for the children and the future of our state.
That's right.
Have you had any discussions with any Republican legislators in the last couple months about changing their minds on gun issues?
Not extensively. I brought it back up again, and it's pretty much been stonewalled on it that we needed to. I was adamant that we could come together during that special session. We might not have got this whole package done, but I think with the expertise that was here, we could have done something, and I was met with absolute no's. It's different now. It's different now in that all of the things that we need to get done all kind of move in conjunction. So you don't really have veto power now that the Republicans had over a special session. They're going to have to try and address this. And I think, you know, the First Lady's right about this. And I say that on my own journey, that as things have changed, as these weapons have become more dangerous, as they become cheaper, as they've proliferated onto the streets, of all of the things that have happened, it's okay to say, you know what, this is not the 1970s. And I used to tell the story about taking my gun to high school, which I did. And you'd throw it in your locker and go after football practice. Well, that's not today's world by any stretch of the imagination. And to try and hang out and make an argument that you should have kids have their guns at school is ludicrous. So I'll appeal to them again. Things have changed. Annunciation was that tragic point that brought the state together around this issue. And so I am confident we can do it. We've got a lot of things to tackle and we can get it. So thank you. Yeah, let them go.
School safety measures in this package, like school safety grants and mental health supports.
You got it.
Republicans have appeared amenable to that. If it was only that passed, is that enough for you? If there's nothing on guns?
No, that's not enough, but I sure don't want to, again, I don't want to negotiate against myself. Emma, do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to mention that there has been a lot of outreach to the Republican colleagues, including the parents of Annunciation families. We have two, Mike and Jackie, who have been meeting with many of them. What we know is that this should be rooted in the communities. And so I've been reaching out to my GOP colleagues on my bill, but the conversations and the stories coming from their community and from survivors have been happening since for the last 6 months.
That's great.
This will pass when enough people say so.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, folks, who are here.
Huh?